I am Athena, 34 years old, and I built a $10 million business from nothing but determination and sleepless nights. For 12 years, I poured everything into my company, only to watch my father hand it to my sister during our anniversary celebration. His words still echo, "She has kids, she deserves it more." I stood there, smiled politely, and walked away without argument. They never expected that. They certainly never expected what came next. If you are joining this story, drop a comment letting me know where you are watching from. Hit that like button and subscribe for more stories about standing your ground when family tests your limits. Growing up in a middle-class neighborhood in Chicago, I always knew my place in the family hierarchy. My father, Robert, ran a modestly successful hardware store that had been in the family for 2 generations. From my earliest memories, it was clear that my sister Stephanie was the apple of his eye. 3 years older than me, she was praised for her conventional choices and traditional values, while I was the odd one out with my business notebooks and entrepreneurial dreams. When Stephanie brought home average grades, Dad would take us all out for ice cream to celebrate her effort. When I brought home straight A's, it was expected. That was just how things worked in our family. Mom, Diana, would sometimes slip me a private congratulation, but she never challenged the family dynamic. Even as a teenager, I had the business bug. At 16, I started making handcrafted jewelry from repurposed materials I found at thrift stores and garage sales. I set up a little table at the local farmers market on weekends, and by the end of summer, had made nearly $2,000. Dad called it my little hobby at family dinners. "It is nice that Athena has something to keep her busy," he would say to relatives, "but Stephanie is focusing on college applications. That is what really matters for the future." The truth was, I was focusing on college applications too, specifically to business programs. I applied for every scholarship I could find, wrote dozens of essays, and eventually earned a partial ride to a state university with a strong entrepreneurship program. The scholarship covered about half my tuition, which meant I still needed to work to pay for the rest. Throughout college, I juggled 3 jobs: morning shifts at a coffee shop, weekend retail work, and night hours at the campus library. Between classes and work, I averaged about 4 hours of sleep, but I never complained. Every paycheck brought me closer to freedom. My father never understood my drive. "Why exhaust yourself? We could help a little if you chose a sensible major," he would offer. But his idea of sensible meant teaching or nursing, careers he deemed appropriate for women. Business is cutthroat and not suited to your personality, according to him. During my junior year, I took an environmental sustainability course that changed everything. The professor showed us how much waste typical household products created, and a light bulb went off. I began researching eco-friendly alternatives to common home goods, products that worked as well as conventional ones without the environmental impact. For my senior business project, I developed a business plan for a retail store specializing in sustainable home products, from cleaning supplies to kitchenware. My professor was impressed enough to introduce me to some local business contacts, but when I graduated and tried to find work with established companies to gain experience, door after door closed in my face. "Great ideas, but we need someone with more experience," became the refrain I heard at every interview. After 6 months of rejections, I took matters into my own hands. I found a tiny 400-foot retail space in a struggling mall on the outskirts of Chicago. The rent was cheap because the mall was nearly dead, with more empty storefronts than occupied ones. The leasing agent practically begged me to take the space. With the last of my savings, about $8,000, I signed a 1-year lease and began sourcing inventory from small, eco-conscious manufacturers who were willing to work with my minuscule opening order quantities. I painted the walls myself, built display shelves from reclaimed wood, and furnished the space with secondhand fixtures I restored. My father came to see the space before I opened and shook his head the entire time. "This mall is on its last legs, Athena. This is throwing good money after bad. Why not come work at the hardware store until you find a real job?" But I believed in my vision. The night before opening day, I slept on a fold-out cot in the back room of my shop. It would become my bedroom for the next 14 months as I poured every penny back into the business. The bathroom at the end of the mall corridor became my shower. The food court microwave became my kitchen. I was all in, with no backup plan. Opening day, exactly 3 customers came in. I made $47 in sales. The second day, I made $62. By the end of the first week, I had made just enough to buy the next week's inventory with nothing left over, but I was undeterred. Each night after closing the store, I would work on my website, research new products, and refine my business plan. At least Stephanie is giving us grandchildren, my father said at a family dinner I managed to attend that month. Stephanie was pregnant with her first child, having married her college boyfriend right after graduation. She lived in a nice suburb, in a house that my parents had helped with the down payment. That is a real legacy. I smiled and passed the potatoes. In my mind, I was building a different kind of legacy, one product at a time. The first 6 months were brutal. Most days, I barely made enough sales to justify keeping the lights on. Suppliers wanted minimum orders I could not afford, and the few who would work with my tiny purchase quantities charged premium prices that squeezed my margins to almost nothing. I approached 3 banks for a small business loan. The first 2 rejected me outright due to lack of collateral and business history. The third, a local community bank, was willing to consider a $20,000 loan if I could get a cosigner with established credit. Naturally, I asked my father. He had co-signed for Stephanie's car and helped with her mortgage. Surely he would support my business with just his signature, risking no actual money unless I defaulted. "I cannot do it, Athena," he said over coffee at his kitchen table. "It is too risky. This business of yours, it is not established. What happens if it fails? I would be on the hook." "Dad, I have never asked you for money before," I reminded him. "Not for college, not for the store. Just this signature, so I can get inventory and marketing to grow." He stirred his coffee slowly. "Maybe in 6 months if you show more progress." I left without arguing and applied for 5 credit cards instead. With my decent credit score from years of careful financial management, I was approved for 3 of them, giving me access to about $15,000 in credit. The interest rates were criminal, but I had no choice. Rather than feeling defeated, I got creative. I approached local coffee shops, bookstores, and cafes about setting up small product displays in their establishments in exchange for a revenue share. 4 agreed to try it. I created eye-catching display units that took up minimal space but showcased my best-selling items: beeswax food wraps, reusable produce bags, bamboo utensils, and natural cleaning concentrates. These mini satellite displays generated enough additional revenue to keep me afloat. I used social media relentlessly, posting daily tips for sustainable living that subtly highlighted my products without being overtly promotional. I started a weekly email newsletter with genuine, valuable content about reducing household waste. My subscriber list grew from dozens to hundreds. Then came the breakthrough I needed. A local morning television show did a segment on reducing plastic waste, and the producer found my social media content while researching. They invited me to do a 3-in-1 demonstration of everyday swaps for disposable items. I spent 2 days preparing, rehearsing, until I could smoothly deliver my points within the tight time frame. The segment aired, and my website crashed from traffic. When it came back online, I had orders from across the state. My little store suddenly had a waiting list of customers driving in from suburbs up to 2 hours away. The mall manager, who had barely acknowledged my existence before, suddenly knew my name. With this momentum, I approached the community bank again. This time, with 3 months of improved sales figures, they approved a $15,000 loan without requiring a cosigner. I used the capital to secure larger inventory orders at better prices and hired my first employee, Jessie, a recent environmental science graduate who believed in the mission as much as I did. Jessie quickly became invaluable managing the store. While I focused on growth, strategy, and supplier relationships with someone trustworthy handling daily operations, I could attend trade shows, meet with potential corporate clients, and develop exclusive product lines. At a family birthday celebration for my mother, Stephanie patted her pregnant belly and asked, "So, how is your little shop doing? Still selling those expensive replacements for perfectly good paper towels?" "It is doing well," I said simply, not mentioning that we had just signed our first corporate client, a regional bank that was ordering custom gift sets for their premium customers. That one order was worth more than my first 6 months of sales combined. By the end of the second year, we had outgrown the mall location. I found a storefront in a bustling neighborhood with heavy foot traffic and signed a 3-year lease. The rent was triple what I had been paying, but our revenue had increased sixfold. The new location had an apartment above it, which I rented as well, finally moving out of the store back room after nearly 2 years of living there. The business continued to grow. We launched an expanded website with nationwide shipping. I developed relationships with artisans, creating exclusive sustainable products for our brand. Each new product line attracted more attention and customers. When we hit $100,000 in monthly revenue, I took the team of now 4 employees out for dinner to celebrate. That same week, Stephanie had her baby shower for her second child. As family gathered to celebrate, my father raised a toast to Stephanie, giving us the greatest gift possible, a growing family to carry on our values and name. Later, as I helped clean up wrapping paper, he asked me casually, "How much does your business make now, Athena? Is it supporting you adequately?" I told him we had just broken $100,000 in monthly revenue. "That is nice," he said, clearly not registering what that meant annually. Stephanie's husband just got promoted. They are doing very well, too. When we hit $500,000 in monthly revenue, I opened a second location in a neighboring city. By the time we reached $1 million in monthly revenue, we had 5 stores across 3 states and a robust e-commerce operation. At family gatherings, my business remained Athena's stores, while Stephanie's husband's middle management position at an insurance company was discussed with reverent detail. "Rick is being considered for the regional director position," my father would announce proudly. "They only select one from the entire Midwest." Meanwhile, I had been profiled in Entrepreneur magazine as one of the fastest-growing, sustainable retail operations in the country. My father never mentioned it. As the business grew, the contrast between my life and Stephanie's became increasingly pronounced. She followed the path our father had always envisioned: marriage right after college, a house in the suburbs, and now 3 children. Her husband, Rick, worked in corporate insurance, a stable career that my father respected despite its limitations. "Rick got a 2% raise this year," my father would announce at family dinners. "In this economy, that is quite an achievement." I would nod politely, not mentioning that my business had grown 35% in the same period. Every Sunday dinner became an exercise in restraint. My mother, Diana, would ask gentle questions about my business, genuinely interested, but careful not to show too much enthusiasm in front of my father. "Are your new products selling well?" she would ask quietly while we washed dishes. "Very well," I would reply. "We cannot keep the new bamboo kitchen line in stock." She would squeeze my arm affectionately, but change the subject if my father entered the kitchen. The dynamic became even more strained when Stephanie began experiencing financial difficulties, despite the facade of success. After their 3rd child, they had upgraded to a larger house with a substantial mortgage. Rick's promotion came with more prestige than actual salary increase, but they maintained a lifestyle that suggested otherwise. During one holiday gathering, I overheard my father in his study on the phone with his bank. "Yes, I would like to transfer $10,000 to my daughter's account. Stephanie Miller, yes." This was not the first such call I had overheard. My parents had been subsidizing Stephanie's lifestyle for years, while publicly maintaining the narrative that she and Rick were thriving on their own merits. At Thanksgiving that year, my father asked me about business tax strategies while carving the turkey. "Your accountant must have some good approaches for minimizing tax burden," he said casually. "I have been thinking about the hardware store structure." I shared some basic information about business expense categories and depreciation schedules. He nodded thoughtfully, clearly filing away the information. "You know," he continued, "if you ever wanted advice on expansion, I have been running the hardware store for 30 years. There are things you learn with experience that you cannot get from business school." I smiled and thanked him, not mentioning that my business was already generating 7 times the annual revenue of his hardware store. I had long ago stopped looking for his approval and acknowledgement, but it still stung when he positioned himself as the business expert at the table. Later that evening, I overheard him talking to my uncle in the living room. "Athena has done okay with her eco-stores. Got lucky with that television spot early on. Stephanie would have been just as successful if she had caught a similar break, but she chose family first. That is what really matters in the long run." I slipped away before they noticed me, a familiar hollowness in my chest. No matter what I achieved, it would never be due to my hard work or intelligence in my father's eyes. It would always be luck, coincidence, or fortunate timing. The most painful aspect was that Stephanie began adopting my father's dismissive attitude. When I offered to help her set up a college fund for her children, she declined with a condescending smile. Not everyone measures success in dollars, Athena. Some of us focus on what is truly important. The implication was clear. My business success was somehow a lesser achievement than her choice to have children, as though the two were mutually exclusive options. What neither of them knew was that I had tried to have both. 3 years earlier, I had been in a serious relationship with Alex, a management consultant I met at a business conference. For 2 years, we built a life together, planning for both marriage and children. But as my business grew, Alex became increasingly uncomfortable with my success. When I was featured in a regional business publication, he made jokes about being Mr. Athena at the photo shoot. When I was invited to speak at conferences, he would question whether such travel was compatible with having a family someday. The relationship ended when I secured a major investment deal that would fund our expansion to 10 locations. Instead of celebrating with me, Alex suggested I should consider selling the business before starting a family so I could focus on what is important. I recognized my father's words coming from my partner's mouth and knew we had no future together. I never shared this story with my family. In their narrative, I was single by choice, married to my business, unwilling to prioritize family. The truth that I wanted both but refused to diminish myself to have them was too complicated for their worldview. Christmas that year brought things to a breaking point. As we exchanged gifts, my father gave Stephanie and her family a fully paid vacation to Disney World. "For all the joy you bring us with the grandchildren," he explained, as Stephanie teared up gratefully. My gift was a business book published 3 years earlier that I had already read, with strategies that were outdated before they even went to print. "Thought this might help with your shops," he said casually. That night, I made a decision to create more distance. I reduced Sunday dinners to once a month and begged off most family gatherings, citing business commitments. In the space that created, I focused on taking the company to the next level. Over the next 2 years, the business expanded dramatically. We grew to 12 retail locations across 3 states, developed our own product lines manufactured to our specifications, and built relationships with major hotel chains that wanted to showcase their environmental commitments by featuring our products in their rooms. A national business magazine did a feature story on the company, highlighting our growth from a single mall kiosk to a multi-state operation with over 100 employees. The photo shoot took place in our flagship store with me, surrounded by the team that had helped build the business. Jesse, now our operations director, stood proudly at my side, having been with me almost from the beginning. The article mentioned that the company was valued at approximately $10 million based on revenue multiples for similar retail operations. When the magazine hit newsstands, I sent a copy to my parents' house without a note. My mother called the next day. "I saw the magazine, honey. We are so proud of you." Her voice dropped to a whisper. "Your father saw it too. He was impressed, even if he would not say it directly." That small acknowledgement meant more than it should have. Even after all this time, the success came with significant personal costs. After Alex, I had dated occasionally, but relationships always took a back seat to the demands of the growing business. When I met Christopher, a kind architect who designed eco-friendly buildings, I thought I might have found someone who understood my passion and drive. For 6 months, things were wonderful. Christopher respected my work and supported my ambitions. Then came the expansion opportunity to the East Coast, requiring weeks of travel to set up operations. The relationship could not withstand the separation and competing priorities. "I need someone who can be present," Christopher explained gently during our last conversation. "You are building something amazing, but I cannot be a distant second priority." He was right, and I respected his honesty. The business was demanding everything from me, and I was willingly giving it. Each store that opened, each product line we developed, each milestone we achieved felt like validation of the path I had chosen, despite my family's lack of support. The physical toll was harder to ignore. After a particularly intense 3-month period, launching 2 new locations simultaneously, I collapsed from exhaustion in our warehouse. Jesse found me and insisted on taking me to the hospital, where I was diagnosed with severe dehydration and exhaustion. The doctor ordered 3 days of rest and fluids. "You cannot keep this up," Jesse warned as he drove me home from the hospital. "The company needs you healthy." That wake-up call forced me to reconsider how I was running both the business and my life. I hired a proper executive team, including a COO, CFO, and CMO, to distribute the leadership burden. I established actual work hours for myself and committed to taking one full day off each week. These changes allowed the business to become less dependent on my constant presence and more sustainable for long-term growth. With the company more properly structured, several investment groups expressed interest in acquiring minority stakes. After careful consideration, I accepted an offer for 20% of the company that valued the business at $10 million, bringing $2 million of growth capital into the operation while allowing me to maintain controlling interest and direction. That capital infusion accelerated our expansion plans and allowed us to invest in proprietary technology that would streamline our operations. For the first time, the business felt like it had moved beyond survival mode into true, sustainable success. It was around this time that my father began showing a genuine interest in the company. What had been dismissive questions at family gatherings transformed into detailed discussions about supply chain logistics and retail margins. He began mentioning my daughter's company to his friends and business associates. "You should come talk to my Rotary Club," he suggested during a rare one-on-one lunch. "The members would be interested in your sustainability approach." Part of me wanted to reject this belated interest, to remind him of all the years he had minimized my work and achievements. But another part, the daughter still seeking her father's approval, agreed readily. The Rotary Club presentation was well received, with several members approaching me afterward about corporate gifts for their businesses. My father beamed with pride as his friends congratulated him on having such an accomplished daughter. "I always knew she had potential," he told them, rewriting history with a single sentence. That spring, as we prepared for the company's 10th anniversary, I decided to use the milestone as an opportunity to mend family bridges. I planned a celebration at our flagship store, an elegant evening event with catering, speeches, and a multimedia presentation about the company's journey. I invited the entire family, giving them prominent seats in the front row. "This will be a chance for Dad to really see what I have built," I told my mother on the phone, to understand that it was not luck or coincidence. "He knows, honey," she assured me. "He talks about your business all the time." Now, I allowed myself to hope that perhaps finally I would receive the recognition and approval I had stopped actively seeking, but still secretly craved. In the weeks before the event, my father called several times with questions about the business structure, tax strategies, and ownership details. I assumed he was trying to better understand my world and answered transparently, explaining that I owned 80% of the company while investors held the remaining 20%. "But there is no family ownership?" he asked during one call. "No, it is just me," I confirmed, though I did set up a profit-sharing plan for long-term employees like Jesse. Was all he said before changing the subject. The night of the anniversary celebration arrived, and everything was perfect. The store was transformed with elegant lighting, beautiful sustainable decor, and display boards showing the company's growth journey. Employees, suppliers, customers, and business partners mingled with my family members, sharing stories and congratulations. As I prepared to give my speech, I felt a rare moment of complete satisfaction. The business had exceeded all my expectations, and for the first time, my entire family was present to witness and acknowledge it. Even Stephanie seemed genuinely impressed as she toured the flagship store, asking thoughtful questions about the products in operation. What I did not know was that the ground was about to shift beneath my feet in ways I could never have anticipated. I stood at the podium, surveying the room filled with employees, business associates, and family members. This 10th anniversary celebration represented everything I had worked for, a physical manifestation of my journey from that tiny mall kiosk to a multi-million-dollar enterprise. I had prepared a speech thanking the team members who had been instrumental in our growth, acknowledging the sacrifices made and challenges overcome. Just as I was about to begin speaking, my father stood up and walked to the stage. "Before my daughter gives her speech, I would like to say a few words as the family patriarch," he announced, taking the microphone from its stand. Surprised but not alarmed, I stepped aside. Perhaps this was his way of finally publicly acknowledging my achievements. A small, hopeful part of me that had never quite died stirred to life. 10 years ago, Athena started a small business with a vision, he began, and my hope grew. What she has built is truly remarkable, a testament to the entrepreneurial spirit that runs in our family. He gestured around the room at the displays showcasing our growth journey. This company represents not just Athena's work, but our family's values and legacy. And as we celebrate this milestone, it is time to think about the future and how this family business will continue to thrive for generations to come. A slight uneasiness crept into my chest. This was not what we had discussed, and the emphasis on family business felt strange considering he had never invested a dollar or contributed any work to its creation. Which is why, he continued, after careful consideration and family discussion, I am proud to announce a new chapter for the company. Moving forward, my daughter Stephanie will be stepping in as Chief Executive Officer, bringing her management experience and fresh perspective to lead this family enterprise into its next decade. The room went completely silent. I felt as though I had been plunged into ice water, my extremities going numb as I struggled to process what I was hearing. Stephanie, who had never shown any interest in the business, who had actively dismissed it for years, was being handed the company I had built from nothing. My father turned to Stephanie, who rose from her seat with a practiced look of humble surprise that did not reach her eyes. She had known this was planned. Stephanie's background in family management and her experience raising 3 wonderful children have given her exactly the skills needed to nurture this company's continued growth, my father explained to the bewildered audience. And with 3 children to provide for, she deserves the security and legacy this business can provide. He turned to me with a smile that held no warmth. Athena has done remarkable work getting the company to this point, and we are grateful for her contribution. She will, of course, remain involved as a consultant during the transition. The blood was pounding in my ears so loudly I could barely hear the scattered, confused applause that followed. Through the fog of shock, I noticed Jesse and other long-term employees exchanging alarmed glances. Investors who had backed my vision looked completely blindsided. My father handed me back the microphone with a whispered, "We will discuss details later. Just follow along for now." Somehow I maintained my composure. Years of business negotiations had taught me never to reveal weakness in critical moments. With a calm I did not feel, I thanked everyone for coming, made a brief comment about being surprised by this new direction, and invited guests to continue enjoying the celebration. For the next hour, I moved through the room on autopilot, accepting confused congratulations and fielding questions I could not answer. Finally, my father gestured toward the back office, where Stephanie and my mother were already waiting. As soon as the door closed behind us, I found my voice. What exactly is happening here? My father sat behind my desk as if it were his own. It is quite straightforward, Athena. Stephanie needs this company more than you do. She has 3 children to support, and Rick's position is not as secure as they have let on. Not as secure? I repeated incredulously. So you are giving her my company because her husband might lose his job? He already has, Stephanie interjected, having the decency to look slightly embarrassed. 3 months ago, we have been living on savings and Mom and Dad's help. I turned to my mother, who would not meet my eyes. You knew about this? Your father thought it was best, she said softly. Best for whom? I demanded. This is my company. I built it. I own 80% of it. You cannot just announce a new CEO without board approval, which requires my vote. My father smiled thinly. Actually, we can. Do you remember when you were expanding to the 3rd location, and you needed to restructure for tax purposes? The paperwork you signed gave me minority shareholder rights with special voting privileges. The memory hit me like a physical blow. 5 years earlier, when we were growing rapidly, my father had suggested a particular corporate structure that would protect the family interest and reduce tax liability. The documents had been prepared by his attorney, and I had signed them during a hectic period of expansion, trusting that my own father would not use them against me. Those documents were for tax structuring, I said, though doubt was creeping in. They included special voting rights that activate under certain conditions, he explained. Conditions that were met when you took outside investment last year. My 15% stake carries controlling interest in leadership decisions. I looked at Stephanie, who at least had the grace to look uncomfortable. And you are okay with this? Taking a company you know nothing about running? I have 3 children to think about, Athena, she replied, as if that explained everything. Dad will help me learn the business, and you can stay on to ease the transition. She has kids, my father repeated, his tone making it clear this justified everything in his mind. She deserves it more. She needs the security. In that moment, with perfect clarity, I understood that nothing I had ever achieved would matter to him. No success would ever be enough to earn the approval I had sought for so long. I was not being judged on my merits or contributions, but simply on my failure to fulfill the only role he truly valued for a daughter, becoming a mother. I see, I said quietly, a strange calm settling over me. I looked at each of them in turn, these family members who had watched me build something from nothing, who had dismissed and minimized my work at every turn, and who now felt entitled to claim the fruits of my labor. I stood up from the visitor chair in what was, for a few more minutes at least, still my office. I wish you the best with the company. You will have my resignation letter in the morning. Now, Athena, do not be hasty, my father started, apparently surprised by my lack of fight. We still need your knowledge and contacts for a smooth transition. I smiled, a genuine smile, born of sudden liberation. You will need me, yes, but not in the way you think. With that, I walked out of the office and back into the celebration, where I quietly informed our CFO that I would be stepping down effective immediately. His shocked expression mirrored what I had felt earlier, but there was no time to explain. I needed to act quickly before emotion could overtake strategic thinking. I slipped out of the party without saying goodbye, a plan already forming in my mind. They had taken my company, but they could not take my knowledge, my relationships, or my drive. They would learn that soon enough. For the next 2 weeks, I maintained a facade of cooperation. I came to the office, answered questions about operations, and pretended to help with the transition, while carefully executing my exit strategy after hours. The first priority was securing my personal files and research. Years of product development notes, supplier relationship details, and market research represented intellectual capital that was technically mine rather than the company's. Each night, I backed up these files and removed them from company servers. Next, I reached out to key clients individually, not to poach them, but to maintain personal connections. I wanted to let you know about a change in my role, I would say casually. Stephanie will be taking over as CEO, and I will be moving on to new ventures. The responses were universally shocked and concerned. Your vision is why we partnered with the company, one hotel chain executive told me. Will the sustainability commitment remain the same? I am sure it will, I would answer neutrally, never disparaging the new leadership, but never reassuring clients either. Jesse approached me on the third day after the announcement. What is really going on, Athena? Everyone knows this is not right. In the privacy of a coffee shop away from the office, I explained the situation fully. Jesse listened with growing outrage. I cannot stay if you are leaving, he said immediately, not after everything we built together. Think carefully, I cautioned. You have equity in the company now. Equity that will be worthless if they run it into the ground, he pointed out, which they will, without you. By the end of the first week, 5 key executives had privately expressed their intention to leave once I departed. I neither encouraged nor discouraged them, simply acknowledging their loyalty with gratitude. Meanwhile, Stephanie was struggling visibly with the complexities of the business. During transition meetings, her eyes would glaze over as we discussed supply chain logistics or marketing attribution models. She would look to our father, who attended every meeting but understood little more than she did. We can simplify all this, he announced during one particularly technical discussion about our proprietary inventory management system. Business is not that complicated. It is about buying low and selling high. I watched the finance team exchange glances but say nothing. They would learn soon enough what they were up against. On the 10th day after the announcement, I prepared for a company-wide inventory audit that would take most of the staff out of the office for the day. While they were gone, I cleared out my personal belongings, leaving behind a resignation letter that was professional, brief, and devoid of emotion. I also left a flash drive containing basic operational procedures and contact information for all major suppliers and partners. It was the bare minimum courtesy to the employees who would be left trying to keep the business running. On a separate sheet of paper, I listed the names of key employees who would likely require significant retention bonuses to stay. Whether Stephanie and my father would heed this advice remained to be seen. That evening, I attended one final family dinner. The atmosphere was strained, with my father and Stephanie attempting to discuss the business as if I had willingly handed it over rather than had it taken from me. The vendor for the bamboo line seems difficult to work with, Stephanie commented, picking at her food. They keep asking about minimum order quantities and lead times. That is because they are a small artisan workshop, not a mass manufacturer, I explained. They create sustainable products at a human scale, which is why our customers value them. Well, we need to find more efficient suppliers, my father interjected. The margins could be higher with mass-produced alternatives. I said nothing, taking a sip of water instead. They did not understand that our premium pricing was justified by the authentic sustainability and craftsmanship of our products. Finding more efficient suppliers would undermine the very value proposition that had built the brand. As dessert was served, my father cleared his throat. Athena, we need to discuss the Smith account. They have been calling, and Stephanie cannot reach them. The Smith account? I repeated innocently. Oh, you mean James Smith, the hotel chain procurement director. He is actually a personal friend now. We serve on a sustainability council together. I will let him know to update his contact information. A flash of concern crossed my father's face. You will make sure he knows Stephanie is the proper contact now, correct? I smiled politely. Of course. As the evening wound down, Stephanie followed me to the door. For a moment, I thought I detected genuine regret in her expression. Athena, I hope you know this was not my idea initially, she said quietly. Dad approached me about it when Rick lost his job, but the kids' private school, the mortgage, we were drowning. I understand desperation, I replied. What I do not understand is taking something someone else built instead of building your own path. Not everyone is like you, she said defensively. Not everyone can create something from nothing. You never tried, I pointed out simply, and now you will never know if you could have. With that, I hugged my mother goodbye, nodded to my father, and walked to my car. As I was about to drive away, my father approached my window. You will still consult with us, right? He asked, an unfamiliar note of uncertainty in his voice. The investors are asking questions I cannot answer. I looked at him for a long moment. You will need me, I said finally, sooner than you think. When you do call, understand that my help will come with conditions next time. The first signs of his company's struggle appeared within days of my departure. Jesse and 3 other executives resigned simultaneously, creating a leadership vacuum that could not be easily filled. Key suppliers, hearing about the sudden management change through industry channels, began requiring prepayment for orders that had previously been fulfilled on credit terms. The largest hotel chain partner put their expansion plans with the company on hold, citing uncertainty about ongoing commitment to sustainability standards. 2 retail locations reported significant sales declines as staff turnover led to inconsistent customer experiences. 3 weeks after I left, I received the first desperate voicemail from my father. The inventory system is giving error messages and no one knows how to fix it. Call me back urgently. I did not return the call. Instead, I boarded a flight to Thailand, the first stop on a 3-month sabbatical. I had planned to clear my head and consider my next steps. From beach cafes and mountain retreats, I watched from a distance as social media reviews for the company began to trend negative. Not the same quality it used to be, one customer wrote. Staff seemed confused about product details, noted another. By the time I returned to the States, I had achieved the distance and perspective I needed. The anger had faded, replaced by a clear-eyed determination to build something new, something even better than what I had created before, and I knew exactly where to start. My return to the United States marked the beginning of my healing process, not just professionally, but personally. The betrayal by my family had cut deep, forcing me to confront painful truths about our relationship that I had spent years trying to ignore or minimize. I found a therapist specializing in family dynamics and business trauma, committing to weekly sessions to process what had happened. During one particularly breakthrough session, I finally articulated what had hurt the most. It was not just losing the business, I explained. It was the message behind it, that no matter what I achieve, it will never be as valuable as having children. That my worth as a woman is tied to reproduction, not creation in other forms. My therapist nodded. Many women face this false dichotomy. How are you defining your worth now? It was a powerful question that guided my next steps. Instead of immediately launching into a new business venture, I took time to reconnect with the core values that had driven me from the beginning: sustainability, innovation, and creating positive change in the world. During this reflective period, the calls from my father and Stephanie became increasingly frequent and desperate. I let most go to voicemail, needing to maintain the boundary I had established. The messages told a clear story of a business in decline. The East Coast stores are underperforming, my father reported in one message. The regional manager quit, and we cannot find a replacement who understands the market. Another call from Stephanie. The bamboo supplier canceled our account. They said something about ethical alignment. What does that even mean? I listened but did not engage, focusing instead on my own renewal and future. The company I had built was no longer mine to save. 5 months after walking away, I received the first call from a former client. The procurement director for a major hotel chain reached out directly. Athena, we have tried to make it work with the new management, but the quality has declined and they do not understand our sustainability requirements, he explained. Are you working on anything new? We would follow you to a new venture. Similar calls followed from other clients and partners who had valued the vision and execution I had brought to the business. It became clear that while my family had taken the company, they could not take the relationships and trust I had built over years. With renewed confidence, I began planning my next venture. Rather than replicating what I had done before, I developed a more innovative model, a sustainability consultancy paired with curated product offerings, helping businesses transform their environmental impact through both practices and materials. The business plan came together quickly, informed by all I had learned from building and losing my first company. I was more strategic this time, building in protections and carefully selecting business partners who shared both my values and vision. Jesse was my first call when the concept was solid. I am starting something new, I told him. Something better than before. Are you interested? I have been waiting for this call, he replied without hesitation. When do we start? Within 6 months, we launched the new venture with a strong team, clear positioning, and several anchor clients who had followed us from the previous business. The operation was leaner, more profitable from the start, and structured to scale without the heavy retail footprint that had characterized my first company. The contrast between starting the first business and the second was striking. Where I had once struggled for every small client and sale, now industry connections and reputation opened doors immediately. The business became profitable in its 3rd month, and by the 6-month mark, we had a waiting list of potential clients. Meanwhile, news about my former company continued to reach me through industry channels. 2 retail locations had closed. The website frequently showed products as out of stock. Customer complaints on social media went unanswered. What had once been a thriving $10 million enterprise was visibly contracting. 9 months after my departure, the inevitable happened. My father called on a Sunday morning, his voice lacking its usual confidence. Athena, we need to talk, he said without preamble. The business, it is not going well. I am aware, I replied neutrally. The investors are threatening legal action over mismanagement, he continued. The numbers are not good. That sounds challenging. A long pause followed. We need your help, Athena, your expertise. The company needs you. I had anticipated this moment, prepared for it emotionally and strategically. I am willing to help, I said carefully, but only on my terms. What terms? He asked, a note of desperation evident. I will meet with you and Stephanie tomorrow at my office to discuss it, I replied, providing the address of my new company headquarters. When they arrived the next day, the contrast between our current situations was immediately apparent. My father looked tired, with new lines etching his face. Stephanie seemed defeated. The confidence she had displayed when taking over my company had entirely evaporated. My new office space was modern, vibrant, and clearly successful, with a team of engaged professionals visible through glass walls and sustainability awards already lining the reception area. I watched them take it in, understanding dawning in their expressions. In my conference room, I laid out the situation as I understood it from industry intelligence and their own admissions. The company had lost approximately 40% of its value in 9 months. Key personnel had departed, supplier relationships had deteriorated, customer loyalty had eroded. I am willing to step in as a consultant, I told them, but my help comes with non-negotiable conditions. I outlined my terms. Majority ownership returned to me through a structured buyback, a board of directors with independent members, Stephanie to remain involved, but in a more appropriate role matching her skills, and my father to have no operational involvement whatsoever. You want to take the company back, my father said, anger briefly flashing across his features. No, I corrected him. I am offering to save what is left of it. There is a significant difference. Stephanie looked in the financial projections I had prepared, showing the company's trajectory with and without intervention. We do not have much choice, do we? She asked quietly. There are always choices, I replied. This one happens to benefit everyone, including the employees who remain and the customers who trusted the brand. After hours of discussion, they agreed to my terms. The legal process would take weeks to complete, but the path forward was clear. I would step back in to rebuild what they had nearly destroyed, but on my terms, with clear boundaries and protections. As they prepared to leave, my father paused at the door. "I underestimated you," he said. Not quite an apology, but the closest he could manage. "I did not understand what you had built until we started losing it." I nodded, accepting this limited acknowledgement. The most valuable things are often unrecognized until they are gone. In the months that followed, I divided my time between my new venture, which continued to thrive, and rehabilitating my first company. It was challenging but gratifying work, restoring relationships with suppliers, rebuilding team culture, and reestablishing the quality and values that had made the brand successful. Stephanie found a role that better matched her abilities in community outreach and customer relations, where her people skills could shine without the burden of operational decisions she was not equipped to make. To her credit, she approached this transition with humility and a genuine desire to learn. My father kept his distance from the business operations as agreed, though I occasionally saw him reviewing the improving financial reports with a complex mix of emotions on his face: pride, regret, and perhaps a dawning respect that had been long overdue. The experience taught me lessons I could never have learned otherwise. I discovered that my worth was not defined by others' recognition, that success could be rebuilt from the ashes of betrayal, and that setting boundaries with family was not just permissible, but sometimes essential. Most importantly, I learned that walking away from something you built is not always a defeat. Sometimes it is the first step toward building something even better, both in business and in life. Today, both companies are thriving under my leadership, each serving different markets, but aligned in values and vision. I no longer seek my father's approval or validation, having found something more valuable: self-trust and the confidence that comes from surviving what you once thought would break you. To anyone watching who has faced betrayal by those who should have supported you most, remember this: your value is not diminished by others' failure to recognize it. Sometimes the greatest power lies in simply walking away and rebuilding on your own terms. If my story resonated with you, I would love to hear about your experiences in the comments. Have you ever had to walk away from something you built or valued? How did you find the strength to start again? Share your thoughts. Hit the like button if this story meant something to you. Subscribe for more stories about resilience and reinvention, and share with someone who might need to hear that sometimes walking away is the beginning, not the end, of your success story. Thank you for listening, and remember, your worth is not determined by those who cannot see it.